Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. Joe Samaniego here, along with Ben Schneider, Joshua Birch, Adam Lemmerich, and Cody Lambeth from the Podium Finish. We have a lot of racing to discuss about, and we hope you join us in the chat room to discuss it with us as well. Share your questions on the air with us and your opinions. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, Colin, Michelle, Mark, and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can invest in the Grid Network through our Patreon page or buy me a coffee where you do a one-time investment. You set the amount or put there a message buying coffee for a particular on-air talent. We'll appreciate the free drink. And we'll start off with Formula One, a dramatic British Grand Prix in Silverstone that saw Carlos Sainz win from the pole, but it wasn't as easy as just win from the pole, lead every lap, day is done. This was a very dramatic race, and really, with his first career win, it looked like it wouldn't happen at times because Ferrari, the drama between the two drivers over track position, we first saw Sainz held up Leclerc as Hamilton was closing in when the race was restarted from that first lap crash. The second time, Sainz held up Leclerc after the pit stops, and Ferrari was concerned about Lewis Hamilton coming over. Then, the team knew Sainz wanted the first win, but Leclerc is still in the championship picture. The safety car, Sainz pits for the soft tires, so does Lewis Hamilton. Leclerc stays out on the hard tires. Then, as we see, as they're coming to the restart, they tell Sainz, lay back about 10 car lengths, and he says, no, this is the wrong move, trust me. Sure enough, he overtook Leclerc, gets that win, and this is really not the same Ferrari team where we saw years ago where they'll just tell Schumacher, get around Ruben, and Ruben, Schumacher's faster than you, and that was very assertive, straightforward. Ben, starting with you, does Ferrari need to be more assertive? And is it now harder because Sainz, he has a win?
Can we just take a moment to appreciate how beautiful this is? Ferrari actually win a race. Carlos Sainz gets his first career win. And what's the very first topic, the very first question that we're talking about is what went wrong for Ferrari today and why Charles Leclerc wasn't with his teammate up on the podium celebrating with him in Silverstone today. Every single race this season, I feel like we have talked at least one point during the F1 segment of the show, something that has gone wrong for Ferrari. And I got to tell you, Joe, I don't know if it makes a difference that Sainz has a win now. You know, Carlos, we know he's a very talented driver. He beat Leclerc in the standings last year, and I think he's had some bad luck this season. He maybe doesn't have the same amount of raw pace that Leclerc has, but he's still a very talented Formula One driver. It was always a matter of time before he got that first win with how strong of a car Ferrari had this year. But I think, you know, this is a team that obviously is notorious for messing the strategy up. And in a situation like what you had today, they cost Leclerc a sure podium finish at the very least, and they almost cost Carlos Sainz his first career win. It probably should have been a little bit more straightforward than it was, like you mentioned, taking pole position as well. But I don't know that we have a straight answer here for you, Joe. Unfortunately, this is just kind of who Ferrari have proven themselves to be time and time again. They mess the strategy up. There's some sort of controversy. You see Mattia Binotto consoling Leclerc off to the side when he should be celebrating with his team because his driver just got his first win. And Leclerc doesn't even get to celebrate with him on the podium. It's just ridiculous.
It was all over the place for Ferrari once again. I mean, for goodness sake, we were hearing on the radio after the second safety car. Carlos Sainz got told over the radio as well. First of all, he got told, give the position up. You must, you know, it's team orders. So Leclerc was let through. He had a damaged front wing. I said in commentary, that is a ridiculous decision because you're prioritizing a driver that's got a damaged car compared to a driver who is perfectly fine and in contention to win this race. I mean, I don't know what Ferrari were doing there because Leclerc just ended up holding Sainz back and then Hamilton was catching them hand over fist. Then we had Ocon stopping finally after his broke his suspension, and he had damage to the gearbox as well. The crash jolted something in the back or something, and it just gave up on him. That caused the safety car, at which point I was like, Esteban, if I see you in the paddock anytime soon, because it was so close to the INDYCAR crossover time that we moved over. It turned out we got 5 minutes grace period. Thank you, by the way, for INDYCAR delaying the start of the race for yours as well. So we had Ferrari saying on the radio when the safety car came in with 5 laps to go, something like that. even when Leclerc was waving his tyres, trying to get temperature down the hangar straight, they came on the radio to Carlos Sainz and said, Carlos, can you please make sure that there is a 10 car length gap just to give Leclerc some breathing room? Carlos, rightly so, came back and said, no, I'm not going to do that because I've got Lewis Hamilton just behind me and Lewis is on soft tyres. He'll easily pass me. It turned out that the softs were not the tyres for Mercedes as Perez got through, and then we had that little battle brewing as well for the last couple of hours. But Ferrari were willing to throw Sainz to the dogs to defend against Leclerc but Leclerc had a damaged wing. Leclerc had a damaged wing because he did one of the most stupidest, hot-headed moves I've ever seen. You're telling me Perez is at fault as well. Restart the race on lap 3. Sainz is on the outside line. Verstappen's going on the inside the loop. That's fair enough. That's a move we like to see. Perez comes through on the inside, and then Leclerc decides to make it 4 abreast into one of the tightest corners at Silverstone. What was going to happen? Leclerc hit the side of Perez. Perez got damaged as well. Leclerc got damaged too. Leclerc to stop the entire race. That contact as well, we understand, is what led to damage on Max Verstappen's floor as well, because it was part of the Alfa Tauri wing, and contact on the other side from when Perez touched him as well. So that camera angle that we saw didn't show Perez touching the side of Verstappen. But what an idiotic move. For me, Charles Leclerc is getting more and more like a petulant child as well. It's getting a bit much now because he seems to be whining over the radio every time something doesn't go his way. He's reminding a bit of what Lewis Hamilton did in Australia when he wasn't let through on George Russell. Leclerc needs to realise that this weekend was all his errors. The contact on the start of the race, the bad restart, not coming in for tyres. That safety car, why didn't he had a free pit stop. Why didn't he come in, change tyres, and they could have changed that wing as well? It would have been an 8-second stop, but the safety car would have covered it because they would have been at delta speed. So he would have still kept the lead of the race. I don't know what Ferrari were thinking. Literally, they got lucky with a win today with Carlos Sainz, and that's only because I think, in my opinion, Carlos Sainz drove for himself for once. He completely ignored Ferrari. We saw at the restart, Leclerc's tyres were dead. And what did Sainz do? Did he hold back? No. Sainz broke the team order rule and passed Leclerc. And if he hadn't done that, Perez would have won this race. So Sainz drove for himself. He got pole position and he took a very difficult win. But for once, I think it was a very well-deserved win. We've seen him as the bridesmaid so often in Formula One, Carlos Sainz. It's nice to see him after 3 times finishing second. Now he's finally got the top dollar bill. And it was, as Ben said, a matter of time this season before he eventually got his first win. Didn't expect it at Silverstone. I thought it would come at Italy.
A lot of folks sort of surprised to see Carlos Sainz gets this win, and I can't imagine if Carlos Sainz did just stay that 10 car lengths back. Can you imagine him, Hamilton, Perez, throwing in there Alonso? That was a very entertaining fight that they had there. Been a bit too much. Couple of comments in the chat room from Upright Fossil, spot on Josh, and then from Mike Tiller. I have to say the start was very chaotic, and seeing Joe's crash and him sliding on the top of his car into the fence and tire guard, very scary crash, but thankfully Joe is okay. And that is sort of the next topic, was this race start, which the restart nearly an hour later because of the horrific crash. Gasly got in the middle with Joe on the outside, Russell on the inside, touched Russell's left rear tire, that sent him to Joe. Next you know, just because of contact, the rear tire of Joe went over, pirouetted, slid it upside down through the gravel trap, which this is where we saw the car started bouncing and get into the air. The gravel trap's there. Of course, MotoGP, when they race there, they need a gravel trap as well. But then over the tire barrier, into the catch fence, and the catch fence did an amazing job. It stopped it, but Joe's car laying on its side between the guardrail, the catch fence, on the other side. I mean, that halo protected him today, and we saw the damage of the car. That roll hoop was essentially gone. The safety requirements on the car, they're doing their job to keep the driver safe. But we had this scary incident, not to mention the sausage curb incident we saw earlier in that day at Silverstone. The Silverstone and other tracks need to look into the placement of items like gravel traps, sausage curbs, and do a better job at keeping it safe, because without the gravel trap, we could have easily seen Joe just slide into the tire barrier. And of course, with that sausage curb, that horrifying earlier wreck this morning would have not happened.
Yeah, me and Ben are going to talk about that more tomorrow with the F2 race with Hauger and Nazani. And Nazani's was completely in fault of it. Basically, if you didn't see it, Hauger got launched over the sausage curb and the halo went right slap bang. The car went right bang, slam bang into the halo of Nazani as well. Hello, Mike as well says, well said, Josh. And yes, very happy for Sainz. That was a great maiden victory. It was. And certainly you can probably tell by my voice, it's starting to go a little bit after today. Don't worry, Ben, it'll be completely gone by tomorrow morning. But after a second coffee, it'll be back in action as well. Yeah, I think I've been calling this since last year when Abby Eaton got a broken back. Sausage curbs have no place in motorsport, not anymore. They are causing too many problems, and they caused an incident this morning for Hauger. And as I was explaining just before we came on air, what happened with Joe is as well, he got spun round as well, but his rear tire was already on part of the rumble strips, which was slightly raised as a sausage curb, and that's what caused the car to flip over because it was imbalanced. And we were very lucky that the way that car sort of skidded along but jumped back, that the fuel cell didn't rip and we had another fire like we did with Grosjean. That's something that crossed my mind as well. It reminded me a bit of Bertie's crash back in Germany in 2001 when he hit Schumacher, got launched up and just sort of jolted into the barrier. He too, he jumped over the barrier and into the top of it as well with the catch fencing as well. So very scary crash. They need Silverstone, I think, need to remove the sausage curbs. Even MotoGP don't like them as well. It causes nothing but accidents. Gravel traps, I think, need to be brought in a little bit more because the gravel trap was there much closer towards the track as well. It would have stopped Joe quicker. Probably would have barreled him a bit, but it would have kept him out of that area of being trapped. The scary thing is, I've stood at that part of the track where Joe ended up as well back in 2018 at World Endurance Championship, because that's where we caught the bus from to get into the paddock. So I've stood exactly where that car was, and we had marshals running away there, photographers as well. It's very dangerous. Of course, I think when they modified the track in 2020, they pushed the fencing back a bit as well after the MotoGP race. So the fencing's gone back a bit. Now it's an extra little runoff area for motorcycles and that lot. To go through to bring people back. But for the car to end up there, that's not a place. That's usually where marshals stand, recovery vehicles are. It's very dangerous. They need to bring the catch fencing back into the circuit so that the car rests on top of the tyre barrier if it hits the catch fencing. They need to make sure the catch fencing is strong enough and it doesn't go through. Robert Wickens as well, from what happened back at Pocono in 18. They need to just do a major safety update as well. There needs to be lessons learned from this, just like there was from Grosjean's crash a couple of years ago. And on a side note to that, because I mentioned him, congratulations to Robert Wickens and his wife, who've delivered us very healthy baby as well, via IVF. And everybody in the motorsport world is incredibly happy for you both.
Yeah, very heartwarming stuff for the Wickens family, and also Robert getting that win as well recently. That's very, very great. Josh, I don't have too much to add. And of course, you mentioned it, you're making your Encore co-hosting debut tomorrow. I know you've been a kind of our F2 and F3 analyst, but it'll be great to have you for the full show tomorrow. So make sure you don't kill your voice too much tonight. Or this morning, I guess I should say. It's already past midnight over there for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I don't have too much to add. I'm glad we brought up the Formula 2 crash this morning as well. But I think, it's pretty much unanimous at this point. What the current status quo with the sausage curbs, or I guess NASCAR fans will call them turtles or whatever, there has to be a better solution to that. We can praise the safety of the cars and praise the safety of the Halo, and deservedly so. The Halo saved 2 lives this weekend, as far as I'm concerned, and it deserves credit for that. It deserves credit for Grosjean and his accident at Bahrain a couple of years ago, and countless others already. I'm so sorry that I ever doubted the Halo in 2017 when it was being trialed and first being announced. I didn't know how much we really needed it, and how many lives it would save, how many injuries it would save. But at the same time, we have to accept that this is a sport that is inherently dangerous. You're never going to get to 100% safety, but we can always strive to make improvements. So as great as the Halo has been, and as much as it worked this weekend, I have to say there is certainly room for improvement when it comes to these curbs and also the gravel traps as well. You see these cars get launched in, and it's clear that the status quo is not working and something has to change. And we have the comment, another comment as well from Mike Tiller, and brings up a point that I actually thought of as well watching Guan Yu Zhou's crash earlier today. It reminded me of the 2016 Australian Grand Prix with Fernando Alonso and his accident with Esteban Gutierrez and that frightening accident with the McLaren as well. So, I think that's a very apt comparison. And, fortunately, Fernando was able to gingerly walk away with that. I know he had to miss the next race in Bahrain. That was when Stoffel Vandoorne made his debut, if I'm not mistaken. And, had to miss some time there. But it could have been a lot worse. And Zhou's certainly could have been a lot worse today had he not have a halo.
I'm telling you right now as well, I'm very impressed already in the space of, 5 years or so since Alonso's crash. Alonso had 2 broken ribs after that as well, and he was all out of that race. Zhou looks perfectly fine. They'll do another check of him before Austria on the Thursday, before both Albon and he will go in as well, because there was a bit of worry about Albon's ankles. That's why he went to the hospital for the scan, because he hit the concrete wall feet first, and sometimes it can rupture some of the soft tissue in your ankles as well. So they wanted to double check. They'll both go for full medical on Thursday in Austria before any action is taken on the track. But I am very good that so far, after 5 years of development as well, with the cars becoming a lot more safer with this new regulation change as well, that we've seen the accident so similar and the drivers walked away with no injuries at all. I think that's amazing. And quickly on this, my dad actually thought it was a very good idea that I think they should really have a think, because of the way Zhou's car ended up, it smashed the roll bar completely in. The only thing that was stopping the car from hitting the head of Zhou Guanyu was the halo, the way it was angled. An interesting concept in MotoGP, when the rider comes off the bike, if he comes a certain distance, he pulls a cord and an airbag goes off. Now, Dad suggested as well, like Ian Birch, and I think it's a good idea, they should look into developing a system like this, that if the centre column, the roll bar hoop, is punctured in, it hits a device on the inside that releases like an airbag effect out the top of it that is inflatable, so that it can just sort of prop up and not skid, like an extra protection over the halo to keep that roll bar, because we saw this roll bar was completely smashed in. Without the halo, Zhou wouldn't be here. So there needs to be like another layer of protection underneath, and I think a little airbag is actually quite a good idea if they can get one that can survive the friction. If they can do it for MotoGP, I'm sure they can do it for F1, but just a little idea that every idea helps, just throw it in for safety measures.
Yeah, that was shocking to see how the roll hoop just essentially was gone in that picture, and the halo was there, thankfully. Another comment, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this where Marcus Ericsson went off in 2018 when he spun with DRS Open at Silverstone?
I think it is. Abbey, turn 1, yeah. He flicked off into the barriers, didn't he? And whacked into the wall. I think that is it, yeah, because there was a couple of big crashes that year, because the Renault of Sainz and the HAAS of Grosjean were the others into the wall there. And I remember that accident actually. We were all a bit worried then, because DRS stuck open, turned into Abbey, the car flicked round for Ericsson and so sort of drifted into the barrier. It was such a sudden stop as well. So it's turn 1. It's a very dangerous corner. I mean, as well, I'm surprised Verstappen and Sainz didn't come together. But then again, judging by the way Verstappen was defending from Schumacher later on in the race and how he has done in the past, Verstappen's driving style very much is, I'm going to crash into you. It's up to you if you don't crash into me. But I think the safety aspects of Silverstone needs to be a bit adjusted. It's the fastest circuit in the world. It's flat, just 11.9 metre elevation change. High speed, it's over 200 miles an hour constantly. This place is literally it is complete speed. It is all about speed, whether it's planes, motorcycles, or four-wheel cars as well. It is just about pure speed. So they need to have a solution that works for all. I know MotoGP like the tarmac runoffs, then gravel. Formula One likes it just to be gravel. Touring cars likes if it's all paved, so they don't get beached because they're heavier than all the other cars. But there needs to be a workaround, because we can't suit everybody. So maybe not everybody should race at that part of the circuit, because they're getting questionable now. I mean, how on earth did protesters get on the circuit? How did that happen? If they can get on, then anything can get on. To go a bit extreme here as well. No, I said I wasn't going to talk for long, but if those protesters can make it onto the circuit, what's stopping anybody getting onto the circuit with, God forbid, something worse. Like think worse events that have happened in the world as well. What's to stop anyone getting on? If they can make it on, anybody can make it on. So they need to tighten up things at Silverstone. And to be fair, they've been left with egg on their face a little bit, I think, the BRDC. The track needs a little bit of an update.
Yeah, that's one comment that we see. Don't forget Silverstone. This is on the grounds on the old RAF field. So I think it should be taken into account. And you mentioned, we were talking about Ericsson's crash at Silverstone. Darknet Has Fun also reminds us about when Ericsson flipped in Monza a couple of years ago, entering that corner, got into the grass, and that just tossed the car upside down around. We encourage everyone to share your questions and opinions with us on the air here. Love to share them. And one of the big things with this race, we saw a lot of hard racing, especially after the safety car. This is where we saw the drivers, they started pushing each other off the track. We know between the battle of Perez, Leclerc, and Hamilton, Perez pushed Leclerc out, Leclerc pushed Perez out, Lewis Hamilton got pushed out by Leclerc. It just seemed like everyone's pushing each other out. And then on the final lap, we saw Verstappen battling with Mick Schumacher because Verstappen's car was not 100%. So he was doing everything he can to keep that valuable point in 8th place, pushed Schumacher off the track twice. And after the race, Sam Collins said on F1 TV, no investigation being done post-race. So, Ben, is this a concern on how far the drivers race each other? Or since this was sort of a sprint to the finish, let them race since this was right at the end?
I think the racing that we saw today, particularly in those last 10 laps, was some of the best Formula One racing that I've seen, certainly in my time as a race fan. And I have to commend the drivers for keeping it safe and making sure that nothing got out of hand there. I think it was the right call to not penalize Sergio Perez for what happened there. I know he was briefly under investigation a little bit, or the incident had been noted and they thought that he might have a 5-second penalty coming at the end there. But, I've mentioned on the show earlier this year, but if you're going to do that, you have to make sure those decisions are made before the end of the race. I think they did the right thing by taking no action there. Nobody got hurt in anything that happened there. Mike Teller bringing up Ericsson's flip at Monza in 2018, I think. That was the accident I was thinking of when Ericsson's name was brought up in the chat here. But getting back to the question in hand here, I think all the drivers should be commended for keeping it safe here. I did think there was a close call or two with Verstappen and Schumacher. Of course, I know his car was wounded, so I'm sure that affected how much he could be on the limit compared to what he's usually used to. So maybe
over the limit.
Sorry, what was that, Josh?
Verstappen's usually over the limit.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. So I think there were one or two moves that happened there with Schumacher. I don't know if it's just a pride thing as well. You're driving a world championship Red Bull and you're on the verge of getting passed by a guy who's never scored a point before in a HAAS. So that might have had something to do with it as well. But generally speaking, I think the drivers should be commended. Everything was kept mostly safe, and I think we'd probably be having a different conversation if an accident had happened. So I think maybe that plays a little bit of a factor into it as well. But, I think ultimately, we want to see great racing, and I think that's what we saw today. So I don't think it needs to go much further than that. Josh may disagree, though, so let's see what he says.
Oh, no, I completely agree with you, Ben. I always do. As well, I'm not going to turn into a mad Irishman just because I'm wearing Eddie Jordan's shirt. I'm not going to turn into Eddie's opinions and says, well, I opinion this and this as well. As Alright Fossil says, safety features are great, but unsafe track features need to be addressed. Drivers complaining about Jeddah blind corners and other track having issues. Yeah, it seems like they've taken a back step this year, the FIA as well. There seems to be more focus on saying rather than do as well. And I love what Martin Brundle comes up with is says, do whatever he doesn't do. As well, that's a good opinion. So put your money where your mouth is. Tiller says as well, and Tiller 2006 says, I feel that every time we get new cars with different heights and such, the track they race on should be taken into account because it's always different. Bang on that as well. I mean, just look at circuits like Monaco, great racing because the tracks were a bit shorter, weather played a factor. Then look at races that we had in Miami, not really a great race because the track was too wide. It was too difficult for the cars to follow each other. we seem to be having flip-flop races. Silverstone always delivers a great race, but when do we have great racing rather than danger? To get on to the question you mentioned about Kobe, oh, sorry, Joe. I'm reading ahead in the INDYCAR bit. To get back to the question you asked, Joe, as well, with how the drivers race each other with 10 laps to go, Ian Birch has a saying as well that everything could happen in the last 15 laps. And that is when 15 laps to go, everything just explodes, and he's always right. Every time with his 15 laps to go, some dramatic thing happens every single time. So he is correct. The race heats up as well. So it may as well just be 15 laps of sprinting, really, for Formula One. That's where all the action happens. I sent you all a clip in our own chat here as well, and you might have seen it on the YouTube channel for those of you who are watching. I'll look back as well when Fernando Alonso was coming up, and Hamilton, Perez, Leclerc, Alonso, Norris all doing that battle. My arm was going like this massively as well, and flipping up and down, and I still don't know some of the directions it was going. I was completely losing it in the commentary box as well. I was having so much fun, and I said as well, my mouth was running, my body was just trying to keep up as well with breathing and standing and looking around and things. That was some of the best racing I've ever seen in Formula One in those last 10 laps. And it was all thanks to the fact that they're all on different tyre strategies. They all could follow each other finally with these car regulations. And we saw 3 abreast into Club Corner. I don't think we'll ever see that again. It was fantastic, that British Grand Prix. It had a little bit of everything as well. It's Mambo number 5. That's what the British Grand Prix is.
The 3 wide, I couldn't believe it. That was a very thrilling finish. Overall, great racing. Couple of comments. Mike Tiller here, Ben. I do commend the drivers too. They do their very best for safety and making sure we saw great racing. Some of the best racing this weekend. I mean, this weekend we saw a lot of great racing, but the Formula One race really stood out. I do need to say Michael Schumacher earning his first point in F1. I'm very happy for the son of a legendary Michael Schumacher. It was a long time coming. And Michael Tiller with a third comment. And also seeing 5 cars very close at one point. You can't ask for anything more exciting. And of course, the fans at Silverstone, over 400,000. Yes, Ben?
Yeah, I want to point out, though, I'm glad Michael brought this up. 5 cars and 5 different constructors as well, because you had Leclerc's Ferrari, Hamilton's Mercedes, Perez's Red Bull, Alonso's Alpine, and Norris's McLaren, if I'm not mistaken. So not only did we have 5 cars battling that closely at that stage in the race, they were 5 different constructors as well. So it just speaks to, I think, the parity of the new regulations. I think have drawn the midfield a little bit closer, and also the upgrades that Mercedes brought this weekend. I think a lot of people thought Lewis Hamilton might be on to win the race today. And I think keeping that streak alive of at least 1 win every season of his career is certainly looking a lot more likely at this point than it did a few races ago.
Yeah. That Mercedes was looking really good today, and it was just phenomenal racing. Of course, it all got going a little bit later due to the long start. So it was just pretty much as soon as F1 was finishing, like you said, Josh, you had just very little time because then we had INDYCAR.
Yeah, and it was definitely quite a dream day for motorsports fans all over the world. I know they had the European Le Mans Series racing this morning, and also I believe GT World Challenge Europe. And then you could move right into the Formula One British Grand Prix, and right after that, the NTT IndyCar Series on NBC. And that race ended with Scott McLaughlin capitalizing on a timely full course caution and woes from both Aaron McLaren SP Chevrolets to win on Honda Indy 200, his second career IndyCar win and second of the current season. Will Power spun in the early laps of the race, and he was running dead last, but put together a ferocious comeback drive to finish third. Alex Palou took second place, all 3 in the grid ranking, along with Marcus Ericsson and Joseph Newgarden. Which championship contender had the best race today, and should Aaron McLaren SP be concerned with both cars retiring with issues?
Well, I think McLaughlin is kind of a fringe championship contender at this point. I was just looking at the point standings before we came on the show tonight, and I think everybody ahead of Rossi, so I think that's the top 7 now, look to be, still within reason. You could say if the top drivers have some trouble, that they could potentially leapfrog each other and still be in contention for the championship at this point in the year. But in terms of, the top 3 or 4, wherever you want to cut off there, Will Power has been remarkably consistent this year outside of the 500. It looked like his race was done at the very beginning today. And then obviously, like you mentioned, Kobe, that great comeback drive to salvage a podium out of it. I think, he'd probably be my answer for that. In terms of what happened with McLaren now, I think Pato O'Ward would be right up there if he hadn't had the 2 consecutive DNFs that he's sitting on right now. And obviously, with McLaren having Rosenqvist fall out as well, it certainly is a concern and something that I think they're going to have to look into fixing, as the season goes on. And, I think Pato O'Ward certainly could be a championship contender if he's able to get to the finish of the race. And that's something that, this isn't the first time that we've seen him struggle to do that. And, part of that falls on the driver, obviously, but, the driver can be the best driver in the world. If he doesn't have the car and the equipment that can get him to the end, he's not going to get very far either.
Yeah, and with the McLarens, with Pato O'Ward as well, when he had problems as well, we were on his radio, on the iPad as well, on the race control. So we were hearing it come over, and he came over and says, "I've got no power, I've got no power." And he got really angry, saying, "I've got no power, I've got no power," as well. And he really was shouting down as well, saying that it's not changing. I can't get the modes working. Nothing's working. He's getting so frustrated as well in the pit lane, and then they got 2 cautions to try and fix it. It didn't work. The fuel mix, of course, not working as well. The settings on the steering wheel just weren't selecting correctly, and as well, it caused a problem that actually broke one of the seals, that they couldn't get enough fuel into the engine. So every time he tried to go for a higher fuel mode, it didn't work. Every time he tried to push to pass on, it didn't work. So he was completely out of it anyway from that moment, and took NBC 5 minutes, by the way, to pick up that O'Ward had a problem. Yes, we stumbled on it by accident by the fact that we were listening to the radio, but even then, Twitter caught up with it 2 minutes later. So that's still 3.5 minutes that NBC didn't know anything about it until they picked up on it as well. So they need to improve on their snappiness there as well, because we caught it and we were doing the watch along. So there we go. To be honest with you, I was thinking to myself as well when I was reading the script just before we came on, and you mentioned Ericsson, Kobe. I don't remember mentioning Marcus Ericsson once in the commentary, and that's not very good, because I think he's had a forgettable weekend then. And I think those are some of the best. If you have a forgettable weekend, you haven't done anything notable, you haven't done anything wrong either, so he's just quietly getting points. It's very consistent, finishing, I believe, 6th in the race. But I think Scotty Mack has done a brilliant one. Scott McLaughlin, 2nd win of the season as well, this time in front of his parents. He's put himself right back into the title hunt again as well, so I think he did a great job. And as Ben said, Will Power, an amazing comeback, definitely my driver of the day, after being right at the back on the opening lap, fighting his way back up into 3rd place. Beautiful race from him today. Beautiful.
Yeah, Will Power is definitely driver of the day material. Definitely, in my opinion, one of the finest drives I've seen him have in his racing career so far. And I believe we've already said he had a fine drive earlier this year. So it just seems like Will Power is truly aging like fine wine during the later stages of his NTT IndyCar Series career. And we have some comments in the chat room, I believe. Got one right there from Fossil saying that you worked 13 hours of racing with just enough time for breakfast, lunch, and the bathroom. Yes, it was an incredibly long day of racing for everyone.
To be fair, all my bosses says, "Come on, Joshua, I told you NBC needs you." Is there any doubt? Not for me. Yeah, you did actually, to be fair, on the watch along as well. And Right Fossil really has been doing it, because it's Independence Day weekend over there in the States. He spent all day with me on the watch along, from F3, F2, F1, and the IndyCar as well. He hasn't seen his wife all day, he told me in the YouTube streams earlier. So definitely a motorsport weekend as well to be proud of over there.
Yeah, really appreciate all you dedicated motorsports fans out there. You diehards who literally sit in front of a computer, laptop, tablet, however you watch all day long from the time you wake up, maybe right after the sun comes up until the sun comes down. Well, until the sun goes down almost. But really appreciate and love that passion that you all have. And getting back to the topic, I think the frustration, as you mentioned, Josh, with Pato O'Ward, he's frustrated on the radio because he can see his championship potentially slipping away. I know it's still very early to say that Pato O'Ward has lost his championship, because anything can happen in the second half of the 2022 IndyCar season. We can see some of the front runners in the championship right now have some trouble. Pato O'Ward's right back in the hunt, but he knows he can't be having many races like this moving forward, or it really could slip away. It was really surprising seeing both Aaron McLaren SP Chevrolets have these type of issues, and you can't help but feel, not just for Award, but Felix Rosenqvist as well, because we know Felix has signed a deal with McLaren to remain with the team. He's either going to be in IndyCar or Formula E next year, and Felix is out there trying to show that he belongs in IndyCar, and he should stay with their IndyCar program instead of being put off to McLaren's Formula E program that's coming online next season. Felix was running in the top 5. I believe he was third at the time when he had his issues and retired from the race. And Pato O'Ward was just trying to hold on for dear life. Pato was leading in that ill-timed caution, really caught him out. And then when he lost all the power, Pato, he was running outside the top 10 and just trying to salvage something until the car, just basically just quit on him, and that was the end of the day for him. So sure, when IndyCar is back in action, I believe in Toronto in just a couple of weeks' time, back from IndyCar going back to Canada, Pato's going to try to put this behind him and try to get a podium, because with the recent troubles that Ward has had, I think for the next several races at least, he needs to try to target finishing on the podium in the next several races. And Team Penske and Chip Ganassi Racing always looked championship caliber, but one team who looked far from that was Andretti Autosport, probably the most talked about thing from today's IndyCar race. And earlier in Formula One, we saw Yuki Tsunoda lock up the rear and unfortunately took out his teammate Pierre Gasly, who gave him plenty of room. Andretti, on the other hand, gave multiple examples of how you're not supposed to race your teammates. Alexander Rossi got into Romain Grosjean twice, second time putting him in a tire wall and bringing out the caution. Then Grosjean got into Colton Herta, putting him off the track. And wait, we're not finished yet. After that, Alexander Rossi and Devlin DiFrancesco made contact with each other. All Andretti Autosport Hondas hit each other at some point during the race. I'm not sure I've ever seen that happen at all in any race of all the years I've watched racing, where literally all of the cars for a single team, a big multi-car team like this, all have contact. And multiple reporters on site covering the race said team owner Michael Andretti called a team meeting post race. He didn't even wait till Monday debrief. Michael Andretti wanted to have a talk right then and there. He wasn't happy at all. And with those same reporters saying that Michael rode by on his scooter yelling, "Where is he?" referring to Alexander Rossi. Obviously, Rossi is moving over to Aaron McLaren next year and not coming back to Andretti. And starting with you, Josh, if you can stop laughing. Do you think Rossi's aggressive driving today against his teammates was directly related to the fact that he's the partner team at the end of the year? And was Andretti's on-track collisions a total embarrassment for a team of this caliber?
So it's the image of Michael Andretti going through the paddock, going, "Where is he?" It's just making me giggle on a scooter. So I haven't giggled that much in years on air as well. That is brilliant. Oh, that's made the night. Welcome to the Andretti punch-up as well, in the paddock as well. In for a fight, we're in for a fight. It's ridiculous what's going on down there. Everyone hitting each other. And oh, which one's he referring to? He must be referring to Alexander Rossi. He was having it for everybody today as well. Even Romain Grosjean, I think you mentioned Kobe as well. He was up for punching Alex Rossi after that race as well. So literally, they're all going to appear in Toronto with bandages, bruises, cut noses as well. It's going to look like a scene from The Hangover. Yeah, probably number 3. All right, Foster says, don't forget the Andretti disaster with Rossi taking out 2 of his own teammates. Yeah, as well. It is completely, it's brilliant, isn't it? I can't believe the action that we get in INDYCAR. It's turning into NASCAR a la 2000, isn't it, at the moment, with the amount of fights we're going to have. Is Rossi aggressive driving against his teammates as well? Yeah, I think Rossi's been, well, let's think about it. He hasn't won a race in so long either, Alexander Rossi. And then he was constantly hitting his other teammates. He's constantly doing it as well. Did a bit what Will Power did last year, actually. But Power just saved his seat last year at Penske after causing all those contacts with his teammates. Rossi keeps doing it. He's very aggressive on track. He's a car breaker, it seems. So, yeah, I'm not surprised he's lost his seat and he's going off to McLaren. I think McLaren might mature him a little bit, though. Zach will take him on. Zach is a very cool, free, happy guy as well. He's very flower power outlook as well, and all about speed and the coolness of it all. But behind closed door, Zach Brown is a very terrifying man. He's got the outlook of a nice cuddly gentleman as well. And I tell you what his is. Zach Brown has got the outlook of Alexander Hesketh, but behind closed doors, he's Ron Dennis. He's cute and bubbly on the outside, life inside the party, but behind closed doors, you fear him. He rules with an iron fist. And that is exactly what he does over there in McLaren. So he'll nurture Alexander Rossi, do exactly what he needs to do. And if you don't mind me, I'm just going to think about it, because down here just below me, I have this little pipe, which is for cable ties that we put the cables through when we do outside broadcasting. And all I thought was when I looked down, Kirby, was Michael Andretti going down the pit lane on his scooter, waving this around like an old walking stick, going to go beat people up as well. So I can't wait to see the A&E tomorrow at Mid-Ohio to see exactly who's got the broken arm and who's got the bruises on the knuckles.
Kobe, you remind me of Billy Mays, but I'm not done yet. But wait, there's more. Talking about everything that went wrong for Andretti today. I guess to take the second part of the question there, absolutely, it's an embarrassment for a team of that caliber. We frequently talk about the big three, in this series, Penske, Ganassi, and Andretti. But I feel like time and time again, it comes up where we're talking about Andretti falling short. It's clear that they are the 1B to Penske and Ganassi's 1A. And today they were nowhere even close to that. I guess Jimmy Johnson's going to be happy, though. He picked up his best career finish on a non-oval in the INDYCAR series with a 16th place today. I think the Andretti teammates going all kamikaze with each other and taking each other out had a big part to do with that. He was in 15 for a little while, and then Herta, as you can see there on the screen, got back past him. Look, Alexander Rossi, obviously, I think it's clear at this point that he and Andretti both, for the sake of both parties, needed to go their separate ways at the end of the season. It's already been announced. We all knew it was the worst kept secret in the sport that he'd be going to McLaren in 2023. I think now that the deal has finally been announced, it's taken some of the pressure and some of the weight off his shoulders. He can be a little bit more aggressive. He can, go out there knowing that, it's fully out there to the world now that he's going to be moving on. But it's still no excuse for, driving two of your teammates off the road. And Grosjean, I think he drove off the road twice. That when they both went off there, that was the second consecutive lap that had happened. I wasn't sure if we were watching a replay or a completely different lap there until Lee Diffie mentioned that this was the lap before. And, it looked like a carbon copy of what had happened, except, obviously it didn't go off the track that much because they were back around the next lap to.
There was a third one.
There.
Yeah, there was a third one at the restart, wasn't there? There was a third one where Grosjean came up alongside for the restart and Rossi banged into him and pushed him off just before they came out the last corner. So there was three, I think, thinking about it.
I think so, yeah. Well, and then there was, obviously, Grosjean came back and got into Herta. That's when Herta went off, and then Rossi got into De Francesco. I think if Rossi had gotten into Herta, he would have completed the cycle there for wrecking his teammates or forcing his teammates off the track. So, obviously, this was Andretti Autosport and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Just stop me whenever you like in terms of describing it with superlatives like that. It was absolutely terrible. And I would love to be a fly on the wall at the Monday morning Andretti Autosport meeting. I'll tell you that much.
I think we would like to show you a clip of it, but unfortunately it's all just bleeps and blobs. So unfortunately we can't show any of it. I think the only word that was usable in there was idiot. And I think that's just about the much thing. That's as tame as Michael Andretti got as well. He's a very colourful chap as well. And I think he sent a message also to Zhou Guan Yu saying, I know what it's like to flip over. I did so at Monza back in 1993.
Yeah, today was just a laundry list of really bad things that happened for Andretti Autosport. And as I mentioned, I don't think I've ever seen a four-car team like this have so many issues. Not with just you want to add something?
I'll say this in terms of reminding you of previous races and everything. It does remind me because Rossi's in a similar situation that Brian Vickers was in the first NASCAR Cup race I ever watched, 2006 Fall Talladega.
I remember
race.
that one.
Yeah, Vickers had announced, or it had been announced that he was joining Red Bull in 2007, and he was in line to potentially help Jimmy Johnson pass Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the last lap. Mm-hmm. He gets into Jimmy inadvertently takes Jr. out. That's how Vickers got his first career win. But it's a similar situation that Rossi finds himself in now. Obviously, they weren't going for the win today. They were much further down the pack because of how many incidents there were. But, I guess sometimes, it can make things awkward if you're at the point where you're late enough in the season that you're not even allowed in the team meetings anymore because they know you're moving on and it's been announced that you're moving on. I think that maybe sometimes can have an effect on how drivers race each other. And maybe that's the situation with Rossi today.
I love how team managers describe it as well. It's like they've done the divorce. Now they're just sorting out the terms as well as to who gets the kids on what weekends. That's what you're not allowed in this meeting, but you're allowed in this one as well. And you can only come into the garage at certain times as well. It is honestly so demoralizing for the driver that you're not allowed to be part of the team. You put so much effort in. Yes, you're moving on, but they make you feel like such an outsider as well. I mean, who was it moved teams just a couple of years ago? I think it was Sainz to Ferrari, wasn't it, when he left McLaren during that COVID time? And do you remember as well that McLaren barred him from the entire, from Belgium onwards. He wasn't allowed in any team meetings. He wasn't allowed to look at the development. He wasn't allowed to test any development. That all went to Lando. And he got no new parts either. And Carlos was pretty much done with McLaren by the end of it. So they completely destroyed their relationship. And that's why I always find it hard that drivers goes back to previous teams. It's just like, you want to go through the divorce again? Really? You're going back to an ex? I mean, it never ends well the second time around. I mean, just look at Fernando Alonso and McLaren. That didn't really end very well, did it?
No, it didn't end well at all. And
going back to Andretti.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't have very much success, in his second stint with the team, if you want to use an IndyCar comparison there.
Right there.
Yeah, to be a fly on the wall at tomorrow's meeting at Andretti Autosport. I would pay good money to be at that meeting. I'm sure that's going to be a rated R style conversation that they're going to have. And it was probably rated R in the post-race meeting they had today with Michael Andretti, because apparently he was really, really, really unhappy. Probably the most angry that we've ever seen Michael Andretti be. And comment there from Michael Tiller says, and with all that, the bleep, 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 bleep going on. Viewer discretion is advised. Yes, they probably need to put that right under the Andretti Autosport name at the shop tomorrow. Viewer discretion is advised, or enter at your own risk, because it's going to be really crazy for Andretti, and it's going to be interesting to see if Michael Andretti is going to be able to regain control of all of his drivers right now for the second half of the season, so they can hopefully end the year on positive terms instead of this messy divorce with Alexander Rossi, because it seems like Rossi doesn't really give a what's going on right now, because he knows his future is with another team and he's just going to be looking out for himself. So Rossi virtually doesn't have any teammates right now. And moving on to a new topic, Marcus Ericsson still leads in the championship over Will Power, who is 20 points behind in our grid rate, and Will Power is ahead of Joseph Newgarden and Marcus Ericsson in third. The consistency has been really key for Power, and Power was in a good mood in his post-race interview after the excellent recovery from the early mistake and spin the top four in points, or within striking distance of the points lead. Alex Palou is the other driver in the top four with Ericsson, Power, and Newgarden. Are these the four drivers to beat for the championship as we get into the second half of the season, or can someone outside of the top four potentially race themselves into the championship picture?
I'm going to go quick now, because as much as I've enjoyed our conversation here, I know we still have several series left to cover here, but I mentioned at the start of the IndyCar segment here, there's three drivers. Once you get past fourth in points right now with Alex Palou, just pulling up the standings right here. I think they've been updated here after Mid-Ohio. You've got Pato O'Ward, Scott Dixon, and Scott McLaughlin, who are all, there we go. We got the standings here. They're separated by 4 points. So those three drivers, 60-something points out. Looks like it's a fair amount that they have to make up. But again, like we mentioned, Ericsson's still sitting pretty from those double points at the Indianapolis 500. Power's had a remarkably consistent year. All it's going to take is one or two bad races, and those guys can be right back in it again. Like we said, you can never count Scott Dixon out. Scott McLaughlin obviously getting the win today, has a lot of speed, and that Team Penske car is always going to be a championship contender with that team as well. And of course, Pato O'Ward, like we mentioned, he's had some bad luck. I think he'd be right up there if it weren't for that. So I think those three guys, once you start to get back to Rossi, Pagenaud, Herta, those are definitely your long shots that have to turn it around like that and go on, a little bit of a run here if they want to make a serious fight for the championship happen. But I think, the top four are certainly your favorites right now, but I wouldn't count O'Ward, Dixon, and McLaughlin out just yet either.
I completely agree. I'm going with McLaughlin. He after today as well, it's going to give him an ego boost, and we'll get back into the title fight. Toronto next. Nobody's been there for 2 years as well, so it's a bit of a leveler. People have experience there, but it's a new generation of cars, so the setup's going to be completely different. That's going to be good news as well. I'd keep my money though on Ericsson as well. He's just quietly going along there, getting the world championship points as well to get in there. This could be interesting. I think Toronto as well, which is exclusively live on Peacock, so I'm expecting a lot of the watch-alongs as well, like when we had the Indy 500 and we had 10,000 people watching qualifying because NBC weren't showing it. It was stuck on Peacock. So I'm looking forward very much to a special bumper coverage we're planning for Toronto due to that. So I'm expecting McLaughlin to do well, but keep an eye on the Marcus Ericsson. 6th today, good in the championship. And Dixon's just out of it, as you say, Ben. But we know Scott Dixon, don't we? He can go on runs like this, especially when he gets a good car under him as well. But it just seems to be a little bit out of it. Today, a few little mistakes and almost got passed by Newgarden several times on the restarts. All 9 of them.
Yeah, there's still drivers outside of the top four who can certainly claw themselves back into this championship picture. And we do have some more comments in the chat room, I believe. Another one from Fossil said that Andretti can hire two women to fill in for the races and sideline the problems for a bit. And you said, let's bring more women into the sport. Anyway, yeah, definitely want to have more women into the sport. Make it as diverse as we possibly can. And Michael Tiller says, I'll tell you what. No need to make anyone feel like an outsider. That really doesn't feel fair at all. I mean, I understand it's for certain people only, but in all other cases, unfortunately, Michael, that's just the business of motorsport. Sometimes it's a business, and sometimes business hurts. And I can understand and feel for the driver when they're isolated like that from the team, when they're planning to move on. You feel like an outcast. You feel like I'm not being invited to all of these things, and I'm not really a part of the team anymore. So it would be understandable why Alexander Rossi, is driving the way that he is right now, and we don't know for sure if he's been cut off yet from all the important team meetings. Maybe not this early, maybe he has. We just don't know for sure, and we're probably never gonna know the answer to that. And I also say, point taken. You really appreciate that Michael, and I believe we're going to be coming up to Josh's One Shining Moment segment here with Adam.
That's right. And I've enjoyed all the conversations that you guys have had about F1 and INDYCAR, especially about Michael Andretti. I wish I was a fly on the wall too. I wish there's a way we could get like a small microphone, just a microphone. And
yeah, we can imagine the pictures ourselves beautifully.
Yeah. And I know it's really late over there for you, Josh, but we had a cavalcade of motorsports all weekend long across the globe. So what's your grid one shining moment from this cavalcade of motorsports this weekend?
I think it's going to have to go to the people who have made Formula One so much safer and all of motorsports so much safer, because we've had accidents in Formula 3, Formula 2 and Formula 1, one in Formula 1 and Formula 2, where today alone I thought that's a fatality if the halo wasn't there. So really good news there that everybody is okay. The safety of racing cars has developed fantastic over the past 6 years alone, as we've been talking about in this program. That was absolutely fantastic. And I think my second shining moment as well definitely goes to Carlos Sainz. Great win as well. Jack Doohan in the Formula 2 doing brilliantly. I think so much good sport this weekend. Silverstone has delivered as well. Formula E in Marrakesh was fantastic as well, kept the championship alive. INDYCAR has been another example of a great weekend as well over there for Independence Day. Happy all the Independence Day to you as well for tomorrow as well on July 4th. It's July 4th here in the UK right now, so happy Independence Day to everyone over in the States as well. Hope you have a fantastic holiday as well. And me and Ben will be on tomorrow for the Encore show. I think this has been a great weekend of motorsport, and luckily everyone survived it. And I want to add another thing, which is happy birthday, Ben, for the other day. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Josh, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Am I being kicked off? I mean, I'm only 55 minutes in. I've got another hour left on my talk.
Well, like I said, we want to make sure you save your voice because we're definitely going to need you tomorrow here to fill in for Brandon, who's on holiday. But yeah,
that'll be my second hour. That'll be my second hour.
Sounds good.
All right, I'll head off then. Have fun at NASCAR. I'll see you all next week when it's sprint racing in Austria. Am I supposed to be excited?
I'll tell you what, I don't think very many fans of the British Grand Prix missed it this year, I got to say. So
they didn't.
That's pretty telling.
No.
Hey, I'm going on vacations, starting tomorrow. So I'll enjoy watching all the action from my hotel room in beautiful Portland, Maine on Sunday night.
I'm sorry, just real quick, because I know we have some show going, but top left, is that a wig? I do need a haircut, I have to say. It's been a few months, so I appreciate I don't know if these are compliments here, but I appreciate the comments on the hair there. But I am going to try to get it cut soon. So
I'm not going bald either, by the way. I'm not going bald either, but it's just that I've sort of had a little dome cut. It was a basic cut because for the British Grand Prix, because it was getting annoying in the ears, but this needs a proper cut as well. Well, I think the guy with the best haircut at the moment is definitely Kobe as well. He's had a haircut last time I saw him as well. I love that look on you, Kobe. It looks fantastic. When did we turn it into a fashion show? This is what happens at 2:00 in the morning.
1:30 in the morning, Josh.
Feders. Well, where's Joe? Is Joe going to go with the hair product as well? I mean, I wore my best shirt for today as well. It's another little fashion one as well that I got as well. And I'm going to disappear before we get into more topics. It turns into more of a fashion show, and I think that's definitely not what our viewers are tuned in for. But then again, people on our tune into us like Eddie Jordan, so maybe it is a fashion show. Anyway, I'll head off. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Good night, Josh.
Good night, Josh. Joe, where are you at?
Right here. I was just trying to avoid this fashion show hair debate. But,
Hey, I don't have any hair up top, if you can tell.
oh, so
Can I get that from my dad?
So definitely we thank everyone for the comments in the channel. Be sure to share your comments, opinions, particularly with motorsports, but if you want to talk about once in a while. But before we get into NASCAR, one quick question from Edward Hunter. I know we already talked a little bit about it, the stop oil protest. Was it a bit too extreme today? I feel overall, especially if we didn't have that red flag for Joe's crash, that could have been a really scary situation. Joshua, I know you were calling the race and you saw where they were at the track. Could have that been a bigger issue if Joe had not crashed and we had the red flags conditions?
Massively, because where they were was direct. They were four abreast down the Wellington Straight as well, so they were right at the exit coming onto the straight as well. So if a car darted into the inside, as they often do go down there, somebody would have been killed. So I completely agree with that point as well. Everyone's got their right to protest. Everyone's entitled to protest and voice their own opinions. Climate change is a very important factor as well. We've got to do our best to get it under control and try and save the planet so that we can all continue. Completely agree with that. We're doing some amazing technologies as well to try and regrow the planet. But standing in front of a racing car that's going over 200 miles an hour isn't really the best idea. As I said in the commentary, it wouldn't be pretty. It would squash you like a bug on a windscreen. It wouldn't just run you over. It would literally decapitate you in half. It's that type of accident. It is not nice. So they're bone dead stupid for going onto a live motorsport track. Completely agree about what they're protesting about, but they could have easily just done it outside the circuit when people were coming in, or in the grandstands or something like that, but they did not need to go onto the racetrack. Nobody ever has an excuse to go on a racetrack. Get it under control, and it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and people who do that as well. The instant you go on and do something like that, you lose the moral high ground, and that's not what it's worth fighting for.
Yeah, not worth fighting for. I believe it was 1970s Kalami, where that marshal running across the track got hit by F1 car, passed away, and the driver struck in the helmet with the fire extinguisher, passed away as well. So it's really ugly and should never head out on the track. And Joshua, thank you so much for your time. Some of our folks in the chat are wishing you a good night as well as we switch over to the NASCAR Cup Series at Road America. And what a race this turned out to be. The NASCAR Cup Series KwickTrip Jockey 250 at Road America. And yesterday on the show, I know Adam Kobe, we talked about the winless drivers. Could they come here, get a win? Well, guess what? Tyler Reddick, he showed up. He now has a win. And overall, we're at a situation, 13 different winners. We have essentially 8 more races left. 3 more winners, we're at 16. Then points will matter if we get any extra winners. 5 drivers have more than 1 win, and they only have 2 wins. Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, William Byron, and Denny Hamlin. Everyone else, 1 win or no wins. Adam, starting with you, how stressful is for everybody with 1 win? Are you more convinced we're going to have 16 different winners before Daytona?
I think we are. I think we are going to have some more different winners going forward. We have some different tracks coming up on the schedule. We go back to Atlanta Motor Speedway this coming weekend. We go to the Magic Mile, Loudon, New Hampshire after that. We have the road course at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And of course, we wrap up the regular season by going back to Daytona. So to me, I think, we've seen first-time winners at all the road courses. I'm convinced we're going to see another first-time winner when we get to the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A lot of New Hampshire that always produces some good racing, and we know what to expect at Atlanta because we've already been there with this new car. So I think we are going to see some more different winners before we head to Daytona to wrap up the regular season in NASCAR.
And I hear we have a comment in the chat room. So if we can pull that up here. Michael saying, I do agree invading the track is dangerous. I do remember 91, 92 with Mansell. There were invaders after he won. I get they support him, but it's dangerous. Absolutely. Everybody, like Josh was saying, has a right to their opinion, right to peaceful protest and all that good stuff, but you cannot be stupid about it and cross onto a live track. There's no excuse for that at all. Also saying, got to be the best show for Grid Network thus far. Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. Talking racing updates. Now we're talking about hair. Hilarious and amazing. Well, we'll try to hurry along here because I know we've already crossed the hour mark and we're just now getting to the NASCAR portion of the show. Upright Fossil also mentioning maiden win weekend for F2, F1, and NASCAR. Yeah, we're going to talk about Logan Sargent as well on the Encore show tomorrow. You better believe that. And I also want to point out, I got the Cup point standings brought up here now. I know everybody talks about the playoff grid because we've never been in a situation where we're this far into the season still talking about could we realistically get 16 winners. Ryan Blaney has yet to win this year. He is second in terms of total points with 591 behind Chase Elliott's 624. And I believe this came up in the Truck Series a couple of years ago. The regular season champion gets into the playoffs regardless of whether or not they have a win. So we could have a situation where there's only 16 winners and one of them still gets bounced out if Ryan Blaney is the regular season champion without winning a race. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But, I was watching the post-race show on USA, and Dale Jarrett seems absolutely convinced that we're getting 16 winners before the end of the regular season here. I've got to say, I might look like a fool 8 weekends from now, but I still don't see that happening. I think it's inevitable. I know we're going to get into this a little bit later on in the show here, but it's inevitable that somebody picks up a third or maybe even a fourth win as we get into the summer. We typically see, I know we have a next-gen car and everything, but we typically see somebody pull ahead of the rest of the pack sometime around this part of the schedule. So could we get 16 winners? Absolutely. It's basic math. 3 goes into 8 multiple times, so we could very well see it. But looking at who has won already this year and looking at who's been running strong recently, I just don't feel comfortable enough predicting that we're going to see it here. I said at the start of the season, I expect Bubba Wallace to make the playoffs because he's going to win a super speedway race. The way that 23 team looks right now, I would love for them to prove me wrong, but I just don't see it happening with how dysfunctional they've been the last several weeks here. Bubba Wallace's radio communications have been all over social media the last couple of weeks. And obviously, they picked up some stage points today through strategy, but, not a very good race weekend for that 23 team. So I just don't know that they can capitalize on Atlanta or Daytona at the end of the regular season. And some of the teams that have won already, I think Toyota obviously have some work to do on the road course stuff, but, you could easily see Kyle Busch picking up another win. Hendrick Motorsports have been firing on all cylinders all year. I just don't see it happening.
And you bring up a good point about Bubba Wallace, Ben. Yeah, they were able to get stage points through strategy, but still not a good day at all because Bubba had a brake failure in the final stage of the race and ended up retiring, finishing towards the back. Once again, and Bubba's way down there in points. So he's one of the drivers in a situation where he's in a must-win situation, probably at this point, where I'm sure he's excited coming to an Atlanta. Bubba is one of the top super speedway races in NASCAR, in my opinion, and since Atlanta races like a super speedway, and he was in the mix last time I went to Atlanta late in the race. So Bubba certainly has to have this race coming up this upcoming weekend on his calendar, and also the regular season finale on the high banks of Daytona as well. And I also found it very interesting that a lot of people are looking at his radio transmissions from Nashville and heavily criticizing him for this, because I've actually seen drivers and crew chiefs, get in much worse disputes on the radio than what I've seen from Bubba. So I don't understand why this is such a big deal compared to all of the other driver crew chief interactions we've seen on the radio. And then I saw the comments earlier today, or it was either earlier today or yesterday from Denny Hamlin saying that stuff like that and embarrasses a race team. And then NBC shared an interesting stat today from the team owner of 2311 Racing, Denny Hamlin, showing that he has 26 pit road penalties this year. So I guess you can say he's embarrassing his own team. So I guess they're even on that point. But getting back to the question itself, I'm not sure if we'll get 16 different winners, but I think we could potentially come close to getting that. Maybe we get an additional one, get 14th winner, 15th winner, 16th winner would be really incredible. But 17, I think that might be pushing it a little bit. I remember at the beginning of the season when Austin Cindric won the Daytona 500, we said Cindric is locked into the playoffs in his first full-time season as a NASCAR Cup driver. And looking at the standings right now, out of the 13 different race winners, Austin Cindric is 13th in points. Then you have Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr., and Christopher Bell, who's 20 points above the cut line. So potentially, if those three win, and Austin Cindric could very well find himself in a little bit of trouble, especially if Kevin Harvick is able to get a win, who's 20 points out. So is these next few weeks heading into the playoffs is going to be really intense for all of those teams near the cut line or teams who are really trying to get a win to get in.
Yeah, when typically you're in right now for all the drivers, it's looking like maybe it'll be a little bit more than a win. You need that second win. Chase Elliott has that second win, and he drove a smart race. Even with the stage breaks, he still dominated, pitting before the stage ended. As the cars ahead of him pitted, he regained the lead, led most of the lap, but again, we saw how the stages limit the strategy in the road courses. Tyler Reddick, he won this based on raw speed, hard racing, and out-muscling Chase Elliott on the track. Kyle Larson, third, uneventful. Trackhouse Racing, they got both cars in the top 10. We always seem to talk about them quite a bit. When it comes to Richard Childress Racing, we don't talk about them so much. They're sort of that third distant Chevrolet team. Ben, is RCR at a level now where they could compete against Hendrick and Trackhouse?
Well, it's funny we bring this up, and it happens this weekend, Joe. I actually just this weekend got caught up. I watched the first episode of Austin Dillon's new reality show on USA, Life in the Fast Lane, and there was a scene where Richard Childress was was addressing the team, I guess you could say, like at a preseason meeting with everybody at RCR, and he mentioned he wants both of his cars to have at least 2 wins throughout the 2022 season. Reddick is now halfway to that mark by virtue of his win today. Austin Dillon's team still has a little bit of work to do to get in the win column. I know they've had some strong runs, some second-place finishes and top fives throughout this season, so they certainly have taken a step up over where they've been in recent seasons, really ever since Kevin Harvick left. I think this is the strongest RCR has looked with their 2 cars here. Obviously Reddick getting the win today is great, but I still think that they are kind of the 1B to Trackhouse and Hendricks 1A when we talk about ranking the Chevrolet teams. I have to see a little bit more out of RCR before I say we can put them on a level with Hendrick and Trackhouse where they can win on any given Sunday. Obviously, Reddick has been capable of winning on several Sundays. He's been knocking down the door practically to get his first win. It's great to see him finally get that today. But I still think, in terms of if you want to have a Chevrolet pecking order, if you will, it's probably Hendrick and Trackhouse battling for the top spot. I don't think RCR is quite there yet. Could they get there? If they keep running like this, obviously, it's hard to do better than a win today. Austin Dillon had something unfortunate happen to his tire there at the end. So, there's still certainly some room for improvement at RCR. And I think they're going to need to show that before we put them on the same level as Hendrick and Trackhouse.
Yeah, Ben, I completely agree with everything you said. I think, to me, when it comes to the Chevy teams, Hendrick Motorsports and Team Trackhouse are 1A and RCR is 1B. Today was special. He won Xfinity Series championships with Junior Motorsports, and now he's a winner in the NASCAR Cup Series. He is a very special driver, and RCR did pick up his contract for next year. So we know Tyler Reddick is going to be back at RCR. So I don't think RCR is on the same level right now with Hendrick and Team Trackhouse, but if Tyler Reddick has some more good runs going forward, and Austin Dillon can get up there, it could happen. But I think right now it's 1A with Hendrick Motorsports and Team Trackhouse, and then 1B is RCR.
RCR getting there. That's really interesting about the goal of two drivers trying to get 2 wins each, so 4 wins. I'd like to hear from everyone in the chat room. Do you think that's a goal Richard Childress Racing and that team can achieve? Because right now, 13 drivers have won a race, but we still have quite a lot that are winless this year. Because the 13 drivers that have won a race, there's still a bunch of drivers that have not won a race, but already past wins. That group includes the highest finishing one in that group, Chris Buescher. He won a few years ago in Pocono. He's still looking for a win. This was felt his best shot, but he's looking forward to Atlanta, as he said in his post-race interview. There's 3 past champions in that group: Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., and Brad Keselowski. Keselowski in a must-win situation, especially with that huge penalty he got earlier in the season. Kevin Harvick trying to break a long winless streak, and Truex Jr. trying to get a win as well. All of these drivers are in must-win situations, essentially. But starting with you, Adam, do you feel, are all these drivers really in that must situation, and is everyone else in that must-win situation, or could somebody still point in?
I think Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., and Brad Keselowski are in a must-win situation. And to me, a track that Martin Truex Jr. runs really good at, and we're coming up to it, is the Magic Mile at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. He has won there in the past, and you could sort of say it's a home track for him. His father, Martin Truex Sr., won his only career NASCAR win there when the K&N Series was known as the Busch Grand National North Series. So I think we could see Martin Truex Jr. in victory lane once we get to Loudon. But Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski, I think, are truly in a must-win situation. I'm surprised Kevin Harvick hasn't gone to victory lane yet. And this year, it's been, he wants to go to victory lane really, really badly. He's a very talented driver. So is Brad Keselowski. We know Brad Keselowski is at a new team this year, RFK Racing. So I think Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., and Brad Keselowski are in a must-win situation going forward.
I think Harvick could be in a must-win situation if we get another winner. 20 points, I don't think, is hardly an insurmountable amount to make up in the next 8 races. But of course, if we get another winner, then that marker drops down even further. So then you could definitely say Harvick would be in a must-win, as would Truex potentially if we get enough new winners like we've been talking about. Obviously, Keselowski, still dealing with the penalty from the start of the year. He is undoubtedly in a must-win situation if he wants to get into the playoffs. And, I think, unfortunately, RFK have certainly improved from where they were at the start of the year. But Keselowski's best shot is probably going to be either this week in Atlanta or when we go back to Daytona. Of course, those cars look so strong, sweeping the dual races. So, I think Keselowski is really the only one that is absolutely in a must-win situation, no doubt about it. But again, the more new winners we get, the further that cut line drops, and you're going to have to, get a win if you want to make it into the playoffs. So, I think you could certainly look at Truex and Harvick maybe being those new winners, and then, it's irrelevant for them because assuming, again, we don't get more than 16, they're in the playoffs anyway. But, I think when you look at these drivers, these past champions, I think I could certainly see Harvick or Truex getting into victory lane. I know each of them have teammates that have gone to victory lane this year. Keselowski, I think it's pretty much a long shot. He's probably going to have to win Daytona.
Yeah, Keselowski is more and more looking like Daytona is the place to do it. But of course, we have another wild card race like Daytona, Atlanta Motor Speedway, the Quaker State 400. Now, when we raced here earlier, it looked like a super speedway track. We saw how, with this race, last time we only had 4 different winners. We were just 4 races into the season. So there wasn't a whole lot of talk about we could have 16 different winners. Well, now we enter with 13 different winners. So everyone might have one goal in mind, go out there, try to get the win. Will this result in a more chaotic race than the first time at Atlanta?
Oh yeah, Joe. I certainly think this is going to be a really crazy race at Atlanta, especially for teams like Bubba Wallace, Brad Keselowski, as we've already talked about. This is probably going to be their second to last realistic chance of going to victory lane. Bubba and Brad are really good super speedway racers, and as we saw in the race earlier this year at Atlanta, it behaved just like Daytona and Talladega. We saw pack racing, we saw two wide, we saw 3 wide throughout the field, and the type of drafting we always see at Daytona and Talladega, and I expect the race this upcoming week is going to look very similar to what we saw in the springtime, and I think it's going to be really crazy, especially if you have teams who need a win and to get into the playoffs, 2 or too far out the point. And I think if you have them up there in the top 5 with 2 laps to go, it's going to be bananas, and people are going to be throwing back blocks and probably going to end up seeing a big crash like we always do in these type of races.
Yeah, Kobe, I agree with you. I think it will be more of a chaotic race than what we saw earlier this year because you have so many because you have so many drivers that need a win to get into the playoffs. We just talked about 3 of them. They all run really good on super speedways. And last time out, Bubba Wallace had a shot to win in Atlanta. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So he's in a must-win situation to get back in the playoffs. So you know how bad he wants to get, into the round of 16. So I think it is going to be more of a chaotic race from what we saw earlier this year. We're going back to a track that, with this new car, and NASCAR teams can look at the notes from earlier this year and know how to fix what to do during all the stage breaks among that. So you'll have some idea of what could happen, where I think we are going to see a chaotic race at Atlanta next weekend.
Atlanta Motor Speedway, next race weekend. Of course, we'll be previewing that race on Grid Life pre-race Saturday, then to wrap up Sunday. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network, especially some of the new fans viewing us on YouTube. And of course, we're on Twitch. We've seen some folks in Twitch. Follow us. Don't miss any of our programming all week. And Kobe, I know one of the programs, the more pop programs we do is the IMSA pre-race programs, and we had another IMSA event.
Yeah, and it was quite a banger there at the end with all 4 classes up for grabs in the closing minutes. IMSA made its return north of the border into Canada for a 2-hour, 40-minute race at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. On a day many thought the Acuras would dominate, it was actually a Cadillac who ended up winning overall. The number 01 from Chip Ganassi Racing, Ringer Van designed to pass Oliver Jarvis for the lead in the closing minutes and never looked back as the prototypes were slicing and dicing through GT and LMP3 traffic. A much needed win for Ganassi, Ringer, and Sebastian Bourdais. Looking back at the day Meyer Shank Racing and Wayne Taylor Racing both of those Acuras had, the number 10 Konica Minolta Acura DPI recovered from a flat tire to get back into the mix. Thinner Day was officially ruined when they made contact with the number 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac DPI from Action Express Racing. The 10 spun and crashed into the tire barrier. While the number 60 MSR Acura was fighting through the slower classes, they hit the number 74 Riley Motorsports LMP3 car, putting them hard into the tire barriers and destroyed that LMP3 machine. Still, Meyer Shank was able to bounce back from this incident, and although Oliver Jarvis lost the lead to Ringer Van at the end, still a good points day for them finishing runner-up, while Wayne Taylor Racing lost ground. Did Chip Ganassi Racing's number 01 Cadillac do what they needed to do in order to keep their championship hopes alive with only Road America and Road Atlanta left on the DPI schedule this year? It's hard to believe we only have 2 more races to go in 2022 for DPI.
Yeah, we're 3/4 of the way done in the DPI class. It's amazing. But I think with this win today from Chip Ganassi Racing, I think it improved their championship hopes a little bit. But I think it's either going to be the Meyer-Shank Racing number 60 car or the Wayne Taylor Racing number 10 car that wins in the DPI class. Chip Ganassi's win held up a little bit, but I don't think it's going to help them at all. Especially, like you said, Kobe, we have Road America and the Petit Le Mans left for DPI.
Yeah, I remember thinking back to last week's wrap-up show after the sale of 6 Hours of Glen. We said that Chip Ganassi Racing was basically in a must-win situation from here on out. They needed to win today at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. They did that, and they also need to win at Road America and the 10-hour endurance race at Motul Petit Le Mans at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. They need to get that one done as well. But also, what they need both Acuras to have a bit of bad luck. And today, one of those Acuras, Wayne Taylor Racing, had bad luck, and Meyer-Shank Racing had bad luck, but they were able to bounce back from that to still have a really decent points day. So Meyer-Shank Racing right now, it really seems like that they have the upper hand in the championship, and Wayne Taylor Racing fell back a little bit, but they're certainly still in the fight. And Chip Ganassi Racing, I believe that today was certainly a small step in the right direction for them to potentially challenge for this championship, but still got 2 more races to go. And those two had an okay day, but not the day that they really needed to really challenge the Acuras for the championship. So I think the championship hopes are really going to rest on the 01 for Chip Ganassi Racing this year. And in the next 2 rounds, like we said last week, Adam, we're really going to need for Ganassi to win out the rest of the season. They're going to need both of those Acuras to finish at the back of the class. Wayne Taylor Racing held on today, but Meyer-Shank Racing, they were able to collect some good points, and they overall they had a really good day, and that's bad news for Chip Ganassi Racing. They really needed Meyer-Shank to finish 5th or 6th in class down there, just like Wayne Taylor did. And taking a look at our other class winners for today, in LMP3, the number 54 Corrado Sport, Ligier, John Bennett, Colin Brown got the big victory there. In GTD Pro, we saw the number 9 Pfaff Motorsports Porsche, Matthew Jaminet, Matt Campbell hold off the number 3 Corvette Racing, Antonio Garcia and Jordan Taylor. And then for a second consecutive week in GTD, the number 27 Harder Racing Aston Martin got the class victory with Maxime Martin and Roman DeAngelis. And the next IMSA race is July 16th at Lime Rock Park up in Connecticut. Only GTD Pro and GTD cars will be entering that race for a GT only showcase. And next, here's Joe with a grid ranking update.
Grid ranking week 14, and several changes in the top 10 and all over. The biggest surprise is for the first time we have 2 Formula E drivers in the top 10 of the grid ranking, and Mitch Evans, with his strong performance, he's up to 12. First time we've had 3 Formula E drivers in the top 15 ever. Interestingly enough, with the Formula E season, Adam, generally we have so many different winners, but this year, fewer winners. And an interesting stat for all our regular viewers and our new viewers, we do pick winner every week. Each week there's been a Formula E race. At least one person has gotten the Formula E race winner correctly. So the Formula E Wheel of Destiny, no more. Are you surprised with how the qualifying format, which many credit for essentially making this series less random, has changed the racing this much?
Oh, yeah, Joe. In the beginning, when I saw the qualifying format was changed in Formula E, I didn't know what to expect. But now that now that we're ahead this much in the Formula E season, this qualifying format, I can say that I understand it now. And it has changed a lot, especially what we saw in Marrakesh. We saw people we normally don't see up, starting close to the front, like Oliver Askew was up there, among others. I mean, and one of them, Stoffel Vandoorne. Kobe and I picked him to win the Marrakesh E-Prix. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Stoffel Vandoorne had a really bad qualifying, and started toward the back. So, I can say I understand this qualifying format now, and I kind of like it. It gives it gives drivers that normally we may not see up front get a chance to start up front. It's very unique, and I like it.
It's really interesting. This was the first weekend where we had drivers that you normally don't see up front towards the front, because unlike the last one where if you were the top 6 in the points, you were the first group out on the track, this time you were the opposite, where you're going to be towards the back, and the folks 6 lowest positions in the points were towards the front because they always had the track in prime condition. So it's made it a lot less random compared to years past. So that's why it seems like we're getting Eduardo Montara, Stoffel Vandoorne. Yes, you can still have a bad qualifying position, but it doesn't seem to be the case anymore where you're just having a random starting grid each and every week. Now, towards the back of the grid ranking, we do see where we have the drivers with a lot less consistency. W Series, Jamie Chadwick, she's in the top 10, but everyone else in the W Series, really inconsistent. They're towards the bottom. World Rally Championship and NASCAR, they're seeing a bunch of dirt drivers fall further and further towards the back. Really, with both of those series, you got Roshan Pera, who's in the top 10 for World Rally Championship, and of course, Ross Chastain, he's been in the top 10 all season long. But NASCAR, 13 different winners, no driver with more than 2 wins. And one of the things is, Ben, as we're talking more and more about NASCAR, the regular season coming to the end, is there going to be a likely chance where you see a driver breaking through, getting 3 wins? And do you think it's going to be one of the drivers that we see right now with 2 wins with Chastain, Elliott Logano, Byron Hamlin? Or maybe somebody else that has 1 win and is going to get another 2 before those drivers?
Well, you certainly have to look at Kyle Larson. I know he's still sitting on 1 win, but he got 10 last year. So, I don't expect him to repeat those numbers this season at this point of the year. But, I think certainly you could say he's a candidate to get at least 1 or 2 more wins, maybe even before the playoffs begin. This is why, again, I'm still not convinced that we're getting 16 winners, before the playoffs start. I think there's certainly a lot of good drivers that have won races this year that are going to win again before we get to the cutoff race at Daytona. Looking at this list here, you've got Chastain. Obviously, Trackhouse have been phenomenal. You could certainly see Ross getting another win or 2. Chase Elliott, again, he could have won today, had it not been for Tyler Reddick. So he's certainly knocking on the door of that 3rd win. And, William Byron, his teammate as well. Hendrick, like I said, the whole team has done very well to start the season. Joey Logano again, Penske, I think Ryan Blaney, he's done everything but win. If you don't even count the All-Star race there, I know it's an exhibition race, but, Penske have looked very strong as well at times this season. And, I think Toyota have been a little bit behind, getting back to Denny Hamlin here. He's had a very up and down season. He does have 2 wins, but I think he's the furthest back of it, certainly of anybody that has 2 wins here. So those 2 wins have kind of saved his season, if you will. I don't know, but he would be somebody that you could look at it in terms of being the most likely to get a 3rd win. But, he is somebody that at this point in his career is liable to win on any given Sunday. So it's certainly a possibility that you could see him get that 3rd win as well.
Yeah, very likely you could get that 3rd win. We got some crazy races upcoming with the road course, Atlanta, and then, of course, Daytona, which is going to end the season. And, of course, for everyone, you can follow the grid ranking with the hashtag grid ranking. And one of the big things, second time, another streak where we have 10 different countries represented in the top 10 of the grid ranking. We encourage everyone to follow it on Twitter, grid ranking, and gridranking.com. There you can follow everything about the Grid Network as well, including all our programs. And we encourage everyone to subscribe. And we're going to talk about one series that is going to be the most that's not part of the grid ranking, but something that has drivers worthy of being on that list, the Camping World SRX Series.
Yeah, and compared to the previous race at South Boston, the SRX race at Stafford Motor Speedway was a bit tamer, but still saw a lot of intense action throughout the night. Saw a lot of hard racing between Tony Stewart, Marco Andretti, and Greg Biffle, but it was Rocket Man, Ryan Newman, who didn't even show up until the closing laps of the main event, getting around smoking Marco to score his first win in a nationally televised event since 2017 at Phoenix Raceway. His family was on site to witness Newman's SRX win, a special moment for Newman and his two daughters. A couple of years after that frightening crash on the final lap of the Daytona 500, we saw an emotional Ryan Newman in victory lane after the race, and we don't usually see those type of emotions out of Newman. Thinking back to that crash just 2 years ago, did you expect to see Newman back in the winner's circle?
You know, Kobe, I do believe we would have saw Ryan Newman back in victory lane at some point. He's too good of a driver not to be there. And to see, you know, his family, his two daughters in victory lane with him at Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut last night for the SRX race was it was nice. You know, the race was sold out. A lot of fans from New England were there, and it was just a really happy moment. Like you mentioned, Kobe, after everything that Ryan Newman went through at that spectacular accident in Daytona 500, I think it wasn't going to be too long before we saw Ryan Newman back in victory lane, and that was quite an emotional win for Ryan as well.
Yeah, it was certainly quite the on which we're there. And when we saw him walking out of the hospital that night in Florida, Ryan Newman was accompanied by his two daughters there, and they've been with him. You know, they've been with him by his side this entire time, especially after that last lap crash in the Daytona 500. And through the recovery from the concussion he suffered, all the way to getting back to racing in NASCAR until the end of his, for now, the end of his full-time NASCAR Cup Series career. It could be it for Newman. Maybe we see him back in the future. Who really knows at this point? But it really seems like Ryan Newman is truly enjoying life and all the little things, enjoying this special moment with his family, and he has a good chance of winning the SRX title this year and making sure Tony Stewart doesn't repeat. And Newman's been very consistent. He finally got that win, and I believe yesterday on the Grid Live pre-race show, we were asking, in order for the elders to match Tony Stewart, did they need to get a win or consistency just really help carry them to the end of the SRX season? And Ryan Newman answered that question. He got the win, and let's see if he can keep up this strong performances, this consistency, and take home the SRX title. And one driver that had an eventful first two seasons of SRX is Paul Tracy, getting caught up in incidents with multiple drivers damaging his car and not being in the fight in most races. But something was different about PT last night. Two consistent finishes in the heat races, a good starting spot, still made contact with a couple of drivers, but he finished third, his first career SRX podium. How will you rate Paul Tracy's performance last night compared to previous SRX races?
I think I'd give him about an 8.5 out of a 10 rating. You know, after everything we've seen with Paul Tracy, you know, in SRX, really nice to see the former INDYCAR star on the podium last night at Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut. Paul Tracy's always been a really good driver in INDYCAR. And now, hopefully this will give him some momentum going into next weekend when the SRX series is in Music City of Nashville, Tennessee at the legendary Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. So it was nice to see Paul Tracy on the podium last night.
Yeah, considering all of the things Paul Tracy's been through in his 2 years of SRX, I'm sure he was really excited to get this podium result. It's certainly been quite a challenge for him, and Paul hasn't really shown a lot of competitiveness in SRX. So it's really good for him to be able to go out there and compete with some of the top, all of the top names in the SRX series. So he can actually feel like that he was out there being competitive, competing, and actually, in the fight, instead of something happening where he's out of the race or his car is damaged and he's running towards the back. So I think it's certainly a good confidence booster for Paul Tracy to be able to have an almost relatively uneventful race, and now he'll be going to Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, where I believe he had a top 5 to end last season. So Paul Tracy is going to be looking to keep up the momentum.
Yeah, and with that being said, it's now time for our grid one shining moment from this cavalcade of motorsports from across the globe. So I'll start with you, Joe. After everything that we saw across the world of motorsports, what's your grid one shining moment?
Easily for me is the Halo device. We saw how it saved 2 lives, and I know it was mentioned earlier how since that the Halo device was first introduced, it has been so effective at preventing serious serious injury or worse. From when Fernando Alonso collided with Charles Leclerc at Spa, Belgium, another significant one, Roman Grosjean, Bahrain, the guardrail right there, and then today, my goodness, it's first time where I feel like, okay, I know some of us, we look at some of those safety changes and think, oh, we sort of wish it could go back to how it was when we didn't have this or that. But with the Halo, no question, it belongs there. Anyone talking about, oh, INDYCAR should have the open cockpits or Formula One should have open cockpits, I'm sorry. That shouldn't be the case. The Halo device has been so good at preventing serious injury or worse. My shining moment, the Halo device, it did its job again and again, and I think it will keep doing its job over and over.
Well, say what you will about the attrition. I'm sure it certainly helped, but we have to give a call to Mick Schumacher. Finally, after 31 races of trying, 31 races of frustration to get points for Haas, and good points too, with P8 and fighting with the defending world champion with a number 1 on his car, Max Verstappen. Again, I know Max's car was a little bit compromised there, but what an experience that must have been for Mick. And I think a huge weight lifted off of his shoulders, because he has had some struggles this season and had some warnings from some management at Haas telling him that he can't continue to crash all these race cars and everything. To get those points and finally get that weight off his shoulders, I think it's going to be a huge confidence boost for him. We have Mike Tiller coming back here in the chat room again. Good to see you. I know it's supposed to be one shining moment, but I respectfully have 3. Joe being okay after that crash, thanks to Halo. So that goes along the lines of what Joe was saying. Then, of course, Sainz' maiden win as well. We have to give a shout out to him as well, obviously. And, of course, Mick's first points. I think, obviously, that being my one shining moment, that's certainly the biggest highlight of the weekend for me. Mick Schumacher, it's been a long time coming for him. He's looked so good in the junior categories. And, it's typically taken him a season to get used to the level that he's at, and then he goes off and wins the championship. Obviously, he's limited by his equipment this year. He's not going to be the F1 champion here in his sophomore Formula One season, but he has certainly improved, and Haas as a team have improved as well. It's great to see them finally get those points today.
And my grid one shining moment is actually going to go to 2 drivers. First, Myatt Snyder, and second, George Russell. And starting with Myatt Snyder, in yesterday's NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Road America, that was a really nasty crash on one of the fastest parts of the track when Noah Gragson and Sage Karam got in a little bit of argy-bargy there on the straight. I know Ben and Josh will probably talk about that a lot more in detail tomorrow night on Grid Live Encore. But during that crash, Brandon Brown hit Tyler Reddick, today's race winner, who was running the Xfinity race for Big Machine Racing. Brandon Brown hit Tyler Reddick, who was sideways in the middle of the track at a really high rate of speed. And Brandon said it really knocked the wind out of him. And Brandon, he got out of the car and he laid down in the grass on the track. And Myatt Snyder was actually the first one on the scene before the safety crew was able to get there. Myatt Snyder, his car was heavily damaged as well, and Myatt just got out of his car and ran straight to Brandon to make sure that he was all right. And then in today's Formula One race, when Zhou Guan Yu had that really awful crash, George Russell, who was also involved in that crash, you know what he did? If you watch, well, you already know what he did. If you watch, George Russell got out of his Mercedes immediately, and instead of inspecting the damage on his car, and just waiting, for to move to his next destination, following the wreck, George Russell, he runs across the gravel trap to check on Zhou Guan Yu, and I think that says a lot about both Myatt Snyder and George Russell, to show that they're not just decent race car drivers in their respective series, but they're also extremely good humans as well. And I think it shows that you can have all the talent in the world, you can race cars for a living, make a lot of money doing that, but at the end of the day, none of that matters if you have bad character. So I think the good character, the goodness in their heart that Mike Snyder and George Russell showed, I think that's my grip and shining moment of this racing weekend.
And for me, it's got I've got a couple. First of all, I'll agree with Joe about the Halo device. That saved so many lives in Formula One since we've had it, and I'm really happy to see the Halo device on the F1 cars now. I think it's one of the best safety features that F1 has ever done. And another one for me has to go to Robert Wickens. Josh mentioned this earlier, but Robert Wickens and his wife had a brand new baby, and Robert Wickens and his co-driver Mark Wilkins won the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge race for a second consecutive weekend. This time at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So those are my two grid one shining moments from this motorsports weekend.
Great moments from this motorsports weekend, and we wanted to thank our great Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can invest in the grid direct through Patreon, monthly investments, or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution. A big thank you to some of our folks that have bought coffees for us before. Edward, Amber, and Zachary, thank you so much. We always appreciate everything from you guys. And from the chat room, congrats to Wickets on the newest addition to his family. Always very exciting. And we want to encourage everyone to follow us on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We live stream on Twitch. We had a couple of viewers from Twitch today. And LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn page. Learn more about our organization and opportunities there on LinkedIn. And a big shout out to one of our sponsors, Public.com. You get $5 in free stock to invest in the stock market. The best part about Public.com on the platform, you got podcast tools to learn about investing in the stock market, hear tips on investing, and meet your friends or make new friends on Public.com. Great platform for investing in the stock market, Public.com. And of course, always, big thank you to our subscribers and viewers. Mike Taylor, great show tonight. You all have a great night. Take care. And don't forget, we're back on the air again tomorrow. Ben Schneider, Joshua Birch, Grid Life Encore, then Kobe Lambeth, Adam Lemeries, Grid Tonight. I will be on the Women in Motorsports later in the week with Daniel Zeri, who was at Monza this week for ELMS. So he's going to be talking about the Iron Dames that are racing there. And then we do it all over again next Saturday, Grid Life pre-race, and then Sunday, Grid Life wrap-up.
Actually, Joe, before it's going to be Kobe and Ben on Grid Tonight on Wednesday, as I will be on vacation. So I won't see any of you guys until I get back. So the next time you'll see me is with Kobe on Grid Tonight on July 13th. So I know I'll have so I'll be watching, you guys from beautiful Portland, Maine.
Portland, Maine, and Michael Tiller wishes you a safe trip, Adam. So
thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
Ben, Kobe, Grid Tonight. It's going to be a lot of programming. Be sure to subscribe, For Kobe Lambeth at the podium finish, Adam Lemrich, Ben Schneider, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.